any way they can to tie it to President Trump. And by the way, there was the Trump campaign did not exist after like November 10th of 2020, and the people that were upset about the fraud were the ones who were fighting, and they were doing it on their own. Sure, Sidney Powell was involved initially, but then when she got involved with Sullivan and Strickler, that was after she was no longer counsel for Trump. So they were just, picking up pieces wherever they could find people reporting these anomalies. And I can tell you, with all the chaos that was going on, uh, we'd loved the Trump team would have loved it to have been coordinated. It was not.
I remember back in 2000, Judicial Watch was down in Florida evaluating what went on. We were counting the disputed ballots and such. And one of the counties let us take back to our office one of the voting machines. And, these were mechanical voting machines that had the punch cards. And we, messed around with them to try to mimic what everyone was seeing. We couldn't mimic it unless we had multiple voting cards in the machine at once, doing a multiple count vote at once. And I guess that would be illegal in Georgia if, we were trying to investigate fraud under the First Amendment. And evidently that's not allowed in Georgia. I mean, what a sham that is.
They're going to say that the election workers access sensitive information. Guess what? They didn't look at voter files. They didn't look at personal information. They looked at cast vote records and system logs. There's nothing sensitive about that. And that's the normal election process. They didn't image the hard drive. They didn't, get Dominion secrets. So on these very rudimentary, very easily hackable machines, they did not get into any of that. So again, they didn't pressure election workers. They actually threatened the real election workers. Now they've indicted the real election workers. The ones who were instructed to be involved in the fraud, they're the ones who get honored. They don't get investigated. And Ruby Freeman herself said that Kemp, Raffensperger, Sterling, the DA, the FBI, they covered it up. She said it's all a fraud. She said everything they are saying about the suitcases under the table is false. They didn't ask me any questions, and I didn't want to answer any questions because I didn't have an attorney present, she says. So in her own words, she is destroying what Fani Willis is about to say.
We're going to try to get to hands here. Thanks everyone for coming on. One thing I want to say, I want to ask a quick question of you, Tom. Do we not, I mean, I think everyone here maybe assumes it, but maybe you can put some more crisp focus on it. Do we not have an expectation in a free republic that full transparency of election processes, how they're conducted before and after the fact, should absolutely be there? Like, there should be no reasonable expectation on Dominion or any Secretary of State or any county clerk anywhere that they cannot be subject to an appropriate and complete review of what's happened and what will happen in an election. Is this absurd for me to say this?
Let's take the name of the computer company out, because I can't afford for them to sue us and for us to deal with that. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, but
people should be able to ask questions under law, and different states have different rights of access to voting records and machinery or other information about the administration of the election. And it varies from state to state. Sometimes federal law guides what information they have to make available. But I mean, the idea that petitioning your government, this is what this goes back to. They're indicting people for petitioning their government, or in this case, acting in their capacity as government officials to do the job to the best of their ability. And no county prosecutor seems to me ought to have jurisdiction over that. But I guess that's what the lawyers will argue about.
They had a constitutional First Amendment right to be able to speak and to be able to meet when it comes to the electors. They had a constitutional right, and they had a right under Georgia law to file the suit. President Trump had a right to file the lawsuit that he filed. So he had the right to do all of that. Jim, to your bigger question, if we this what you just described in the inability to have that complete transparency when it comes to the election process is the number one. Well, I can't say that because the number one problem right now is that we're living in a lawless two-tiered system of government, but it is one of the most important contributing factors to why we had so many questions about what happened after the 2020 election in the first place. When you don't have transparency, it leads to lots and lots of questions. When you can't get answers to those questions, it creates massive doubt. And when you have doubt in the integrity of election systems in the United States of America, it shakes the foundation of government that our constitutional republic is built upon. We have to know that we are governed the people who govern us are only governed by our consent. And when we don't believe that and we don't have faith in that, it rocks the entire system and it creates massive instability and in a very dangerous time in our country. And I think because of that lack of transparency and because the computer systems, and there are multiple systems involved. It's not just the system that casts the ballots. There are a bunch of different computer systems involved, and they all want to protect their proprietary software. And I get that. You know, I respect intellectual property rights. I understand that, but you can't protect the proprietary software so much that people can't question and get answers when it comes to the transparency of elections. And it's why I think we need to move away from the computerized systems altogether.
And listen, we're back in 2000. There was an election system that we found out had flaws that no one had anticipated beforehand. That is the whole hanging Chad issue, the punch card issue, and that was addressed and thought through and considered. This is the same thing. We have to constantly, it seems to me, be thinking through how we conduct this, learn from errors, be honest about what has happened, which can only happen when it's full transparency. It's not just voting computer systems, although there are many of those. There are many things that we do, and the early voting process, and what is happening with those ballots, and what states have done to figure that out. There's a whole lot here to consider and think through that is very relevant to making sure that people can have confidence in elections, even when the outcome goes against what their desires are.
And something you just said is really important to understand about Georgia. So I was deployed in the year 2000 through the RNC and the Georgia Republican Party to go and help with the recount in Florida. And after what happened in Florida in the year 2000, for the next election in the year 2002, so the next statewide election, Georgia changed from every county across the state having different kinds of voting systems to having a single voting system statewide that was the same for all 159 counties. And the system that we had then did not even print a paper ballot. So you pushed things on a screen and then you pressed a button that said cast ballot, and you never really knew for certain if it was reading. You have no idea if it read what you pushed or not. And so they changed the systems in the year 2020 to print the ballots, but if you print the ballots and then you have a risk limiting audit and you tell the counties that you can have a 5% variance margin of error in the risk limiting audit versus what the total count certified count was, that does not create confidence in the election. It does not add any integrity to the election system at all, and it creates just absolute distrust. And until the elected officials are willing to accept this and understand that we don't trust the system anymore, we're going to continue to have these flawed systems, and we're not going to trust the outcome completely of the elections.